What's the state of the Knicks?
Well, I think it's all coming down to Jeff Hornacek. This is obviously a big year. The coach has to take a lot of blame for last year with the roster that Phil Jackson ultimately assembled. A lot of people thought that team would be a playoff team and would be a lot better. Whether or not Phil Jackson didn't allow Jeff Hornacek to implement his system and kind of over-meddled and overlooked him as a coach, I don't know what was going on behind the scenes, but Jeff Hornacek has to step up and do a good job coaching this year and try to get this team, to bounce back after a really disappointing season last year.
You start out training camp where you don't have Derrick Rose for most of the time because he had his personal issues, and Jeff Hornacek wasn't able to coach defense from the very beginning as he wanted to. Joakim Noah didn't show up in shape, and he wasn't ready to play for most of that season. So you have all those issues. Still, they start out 14-10, and Porzingis in the first quarter of the season arguably was an all-star caliber player, played really well. He started getting disillusioned. We started hearing some of the things he was saying post-game, referencing things and issues with the team. But this is, again, this is a team that you saw some things last year where you thought there was a promise and possibility, but there's always something that was pulling this team from being able to be as good as they should be. Was it the offensive system? Was it, to me, it was their defense and lack thereof that was the biggest issue of all, and that still needs to remain, to me, the focus of this team is getting better defensively, being more of a defensive-minded team, because there's plenty of offense on this roster, and we'll see what happens with Rose and some other decisions they have to make with the roster, but, there was enough talent for this team to be good enough last year. They fell short of it. Everyone is to blame for it, and I'm curious to see what they do going forward. What is the priority? What's the identity? I think state of the team, what's their identity? That needs to be said.
Okay, one of the big things in the room is Carmelo Anthony.
Yes.
Got a gut feeling about that?
Listen, you have 2 more years at $24 million a year. The guy played a lot of games last year. He gave you 22, 23 points a game, all right? He's still a very, very capable player in the NBA. If you're paying him that much amount of money, why not just, bring those numbers? There you go, 22.4 points a game. He's a scoring machine. You got to figure out a way to help him on the defensive end of the floor because he doesn't move the way he used to. He's not as athletic. He only had 12 dunks last season, where he used to be a high flyer and a guy that played above the rim a lot. If you got him under contract and you can't get anything for him via trade that's really worth his value, then I think you roll with Carmelo Anthony and you hope you can figure out a way to, as a coach, become better on the defensive end of the floor despite some of his shortcomings as far as his athleticism and losing his step.
He's got to be a 4. I think we've established that. He's a 4.
And that means KP's got to be a 5.
And you have all summer to figure out whether there's a team out there that would be willing to make a trade. And I do think that still is the possibility. He does control that with the no trade, however.
All right, as far as the triangle goes, in a way, Phil Jackson leaving has to be a little bit liberating to this team.
Well, it's less emphasis on it, no question. I mean, you don't expect that would be the priority, and it just was a lot of times in practice and sometimes the play. You heard the players. I mean, we heard them all season, how they just kept saying how difficult it was, the challenge that it was. Jeff Hornacek, when he was with Phoenix, and his better years in Phoenix, 2-guard offense where it did a lot of scoring from the perimeter, a lot of screen roll, a lot of up-tempo. Shot threes as well. You've got to, again, if they're going to have guards who can score, you also have to have guys that can stretch the floor and shoot threes. So, to me, it's really how they're going to build this team, because you don't know what's going to happen with Derrick Rose. It's got to start there, point of attack. And then I keep going back to this, defense. Are they going to be a good defensive team this year? Do they have the ability with the personnel to be a good defensive team this year?
Guys, all the teams I played on, the general manager, president, they assembled the team and they let the coach do his thing. Kevin McHale used to go off hunting for 6-8 weeks at a time and just let Flip Saunders do his job and coach the team and run the locker room. That's how normally it's supposed to be run. But offense wasn't a problem. I don't care what offense this team ran. Last year, they put the ball in the basket.
105
they
a game.
Had 3 guys that almost averaged 20 points a game, and Derrick Rose, Porzingis, and Carmelo Anthony. The defensive end of the floor was the major problem for this team. That's Jeff Hornacek's job to figure out how to make this team a better defensive team.